I've been reading your biography on your website. You've worked with a number of composers. Tell us about your origins with music. What really sparked this as a passion for you?
I would have to say, growing up in the era of Star Wars and Superman and E.T., Indiana Jones, all of which were scored by
John
John
Williams.
Williams, it's pretty much that planted the seed early on. It was pretty much my earliest memories were going to the drive-in and seeing movies that was the beginning of the blockbuster and the big Hollywood score and the big payoff moments with the big theme blaring and everything and it was just an exciting time for music and John Williams was and is will always be the king of film music. I was 3 years old when Star Wars came out, so I didn't exactly know what was going on musically, but I knew that when the themes were playing, I knew that was something special.
Well, they were resonating for you on a personal level.
Definitely. I always wanted to be involved with movies on some level, whether it was artistically or doing special effects or something, but at some point being involved with music, that became like the most obvious option.
What colors do you like to play with when it comes to music? What are you more interested in working on? Like a more classical sounding? If you had your choice, would you go for a more classical sounding project, or would you go for something more mechanical, more industrial, more techno, more 21st century? If you had your pick of any project, what would you really go after?
Well, when you said colors, I was going to say fuchsia, but I think I might have missed the. I like the idea of variety, so it's hard to say that there's any one thing I'd love to do. I also love the idea of doing a mixture of things in projects, like orchestral mixed with electronic, mixed with sounds that I've created from nothing or from manipulating real world sounds. That kind of thing's exciting for me. I think every composer wants to do something that's never been heard before, and that's the absolute hardest thing for any of us to do.
Yeah, that magic formula is really far out there, isn't it? Do something completely original.
Exactly. Every once in a while, something will just pop out of nowhere, and everyone will be like, "Why didn't I think of that?" Mm-hmm. And it happens every once in a while, and I guess we all just want to have our own stab at that kind of thing.
But isn't every musician influenced by any other musician that they listen to? Doesn't it all seep into your subconscious?
Absolutely. All we are as creative people are, we take in everything that we see and hear, we process it in our own way, and then come up with something that's sort of a conglomeration of all those things. And, we hope that it's at least worthy of, being heard in the same context as some of the influences we have.
Do you ever create a piece and then a few days later say, "Oh man, that sounds like something that I've heard before"? I have a friend who's doing the Gateworld's score, and he had been writing a piece for several days, and then he played it back, and it dawned on him that he had basically ripped off the entire dungeon theme for the classic Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, sure, that does happen. Sometimes it happens while I'm writing it. It's usually better if it happens while I'm writing it. I'm like, oh, this sounds a lot like that, so I better go get away from that while I can.
Is that a constant scare of a composer that you're ripping off someone else's work, or at some point do you just have to give up and say, I'm doing the best I can with this, and I'm trying not to rip anyone off, but I'm only human?
Every time you sign a contract, you sign a certificate of authorship saying that I wrote this, and if the company gets sued for copyright infringement, I'm taking full responsibility for that. So there's a legal fear of that, but more importantly, nobody wants to be known as the guy that rips everyone off. There's that personal, professional feeling. But at the same time, film music is a language in a sense, because every film score ever written sounds a little bit like the other ones, and there are certain musical phrases, chords, progressions that all sound slightly similar. You can't really do a sci-fi score or a horror score or an action score without borrowing a little bit from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you're going to end up with something that completely alienates the audience, and or if you're lucky, you'll come up with a whole brand new approach. But yeah, you have to throw in a little bit of influence from other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when, at what point in your youth or post youth did you decide that art was not the direction, or like physical art, drawings and things like that, was not the direction that you wanted to go in, and you wanted to go in with music?
It's something about drawing. Art and music for me are both very interesting creative outlets, but something about music, the fact that you can experience it. I'd rather listen to a piece of music for 3 minutes than stare at a piece of art for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not to say that there isn't a lot to be gained from viewing a painting or
No,
something.
that's your preference, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But also, even better, I'd love to, listen to a piece of music combined with an image or a series of images. The idea. I started to see how music, when combined with art or with pictures, became so much more powerful than a piece of music could be on its own. It took on a whole new level of emotional and intellectual influence, and just seemed so exciting, the idea of doing that kind of thing. The snowball started rolling, and I really started to see how exciting music, and especially music to picture, could be.
Tell us about the path that led you to Stargate. How did
Well,
that ball start to get rolling?
a friend introduced me to Joel back in the day when I was setting up equipment and helping out other composers.
What season of Stargate was this in when you were first introduced to Joel?
I started right before season 3.
Okay.
He had just wrapped season 2. He was moving to a new house and a new studio. I helped him move and get set up in his new studio, and stayed on as his assistant. And over the years, did everything from mixing to orchestrating to helping manage his sample library, and eventually ended up getting to write on the show, which was a great opportunity.
And when did that happen?
Like I said, around season 8, I started on SG1, and then for Atlantis, I started about halfway through season 3, actually. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
right.
Okay. Now, for writing on SG1, for writing on Stargate, how does this work? Do you pick up Joel's scraps, or where he didn't have a chance to get to, or does he say, you know what, this scene, I'd like Neal to take a stab at this scene, either because I don't think that it suits what I like to focus on, or I don't have time for it, or I think his tastes are perfect for this. How does this work?
We have a finely tuned machine at this point. Rick Chaddock, the music editor, and Joel will spot the show and decide where the music's going to go, and come up with a list of cues.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Joel will usually see what kind of direction the show is going to go, and if it involves a new character or a new vibe or something that requires a new theme, he'll develop that. And then based on that, we'll kind of see where our individual strengths or just what makes the best sense time-wise. I'll go in and basically fill in the gaps a lot of the time, and then sometimes I'll, get a chance to do something really exciting. And what's always fun for me is staying true to the themes that he's established over the years, and finding a good payoff moment to bring in this person's theme or that person's theme. And the fact that the fans really are very keen on that kind of thing, it's great inspiration knowing that they pay attention to that stuff, and it's not lost on the audience.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, Joel's sound is signature Stargate sound. He's been working on this since Children of the Gods and all the way up through Enemy of the Gate and the SG-1 DVD movies, and now, of course, Universe. Do you find yourself in conflict when you're creating music for Stargate, that you have to go more with Joel's signature sound and not your own signature sound? How similar and different are they when you compare the two together? How do you handle a situation like this? Because you want to obviously be your own musician, yet you have to service a very specific sound on a show.
Yeah, I think over the years I've gotten so comfortable with the sound that Joel established, that it's a very seamless kind of thing. There's been times where we've looked back at old shows and heard something and been like, did I write that or did Joel write that? And we couldn't even tell, because me as a composer myself, we do have differences in our individual styles, but I think they complement each other well. And especially in the case of Stargate shows, we're all going for the same sound that's been established, and we work pretty seamlessly, I think.
Well, you're working from the same palette of colors, so I would imagine that anything that comes out must. Not only does it have to sound reasonably seamless, but it should by nature of how you guys have set yourselves up.
Yeah, I mean, even on a technical level, we use the same samples, and we have the same software and everything, and we talk frequently about, let's use this kind of instrument or that kind of instrument. And so yeah, on a technical level, we're very much in sync. And then on a musical level, we're both also influenced by a lot of the same people. The precedent has been set for science fiction music in the past, and we borrow from that as much as Joel's established the specific sound of Stargate.
Now, each episode is not scored in a vacuum. I would imagine you guys are working on numerous episodes simultaneously, or do you take it one at a time?
Well, it's usually one at a time.
Okay.
But occasionally there'll be like for one reason or another, we'll have to jump back and forth. But it's usually because the episodes get mixed about once a week, or a little less frequently than that. And so usually we would focus on one episode and then the next, and you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is the next show coming at you.
If we're at the beginning of the season and these episodes that have been shot are just now airing, how long do you guys have to score it before we see it on air? How much time has passed? Because you guys are usually near the butt end of post, right?
Yes. I'm trying to think. We're scoring the episodes a week before they mix, and then I would say another 2 or 3 weeks after that, they do like a second mix and finalize everything, and then it's pretty much ready for broadcast. I'm trying to think of in the past how things have gone. We've maybe started working on them in April, and they've ended up airing in July, something like that. It depends a great deal. So we're not like scoring them a week before they air or anything like that.
Right. You're not like Law and Order or CSI, They were filmed a month ago, and here they are.
Yes. No, not like that.
About how much of an episode, percentage-wise, will contain original music? How do you allocate this time? Now, I'm sure when there were 40 episodes a year, it had to have been hell. And now there are 20, and it gives you, I'm sure, a little bit more breathing room to dedicate to each episode. When you get an episode in, do you typically watch the episode and find the places where there are music, or do you say, okay, each episode generally will start off with 15 minutes of music, and then we'll add or subtract depending on the content of the episode? How does that work when you get an episode?
Every episode's different.
Okay.
We treat each one like a little movie in itself. They range from the minimum, 12 minutes maybe is one of the lightest shows we've done. They've gone all the way up to like 33 minutes.
Wow.
Out of a 44-minute episode. And they kind of hover around 22 to 26 minutes maybe. Some of the episodes that tend to be more driven by exposition and some of the very strong acting episodes, like The Shrine, for example, with Rodney decaying in his mental state. The acting really drove that episode, and there wasn't a lot of need for music. On the other end of things, you get some of the season finales, or the mid-season finale, like
Lost Tribe and First Contact.
exactly that kind of show. It's like very action driven. You got a lot of space battles and that kind of thing, and those will be heavier shows. So we just take it episode by episode.
I really loved First Contact and Lost Tribe, and how we had in First Contact we had a very mechanical, very abrupt sound for this new enemy when they invade Atlantis base. Did you have any part in creating that sound?
No, that was Joel did that one. Joel did the cue where they actually attacked the base, as well as a kind of a theme for them, and we were able to develop that over the course of the two shows. And he also brought in, because they ended up being in the Asgard. We worked in the Asgard theme as well, and kind of did a darker version of it.
Yeah, it was minor when the Asgard revealed himself. You guys switched from the happy-go-lucky Asgard music to a dark Asgard, just with that chord change.
That might have been me, but again, I was very keen to use the original theme, and I think the great part about that particular set of episodes, those two episodes, was it's like a movie in a sense. You have a story arc that goes over 2 hours, and it's a great opportunity to introduce a theme and build it over time. So by the end of the two episodes, you really have a musical identity that every time the theme comes in for the bad guys, it really ties everything together very well.
Well, it's pulling on our emotions, and it's establishing, if not only on the screen, if it's not actually happening on the screen at that moment, that something involving them is going on.
Yes.
It does a really good job of tying things together. That's one of the great things about your guys' music, is it makes us remember that things can be going on that are not necessarily on the screen at that moment, that we should be recognizing in our hearts.
Exactly. Sometimes you score what's on screen, sometimes you score what's not going on screen.
Well, there's so much more that's happening on these shows that's not going on screen.
Exactly.
That music is the language of emotion. I can't remember who said that. And you have to speak to that for such a character-driven show as these. What are some of the moments with your time on Stargate that you are most proud of in terms of what was put out in the final cuts? Are there any cues that you are particularly fond of that we can discuss?
There's been so many, but I would say season 9 of SG-1 was, especially musically for us, was an immense challenge. That we had had so many new characters and themes and storylines to kind of to come up with to kind of kick things off strong. But one fun thing I remember doing was the duel between Mitchell in Avalon Part 2. The Knight and Mitchell's duel was a lot of fun. I wanted to do something very kind of swashbuckling and exciting. Another from that season was Powers That Be. I wrote a theme for that one that was kind of the counterpoint to the Ori invasion theme. So it was kind of a a more somber Lawrence of Arabia-esque kind of theme that went with the villagers getting sick from the Ori disease. Another favorite was in season 4 of Atlantis in Quarantine, when Shepard has to climb to the top of the
tower.
The tower. That was a fun scene. You know, had the big shot of the camera panning around the top of the tower, and that was a good opportunity to bring in a variation of the Atlantis theme. First Strike. Speaking of scenes that involve a lot of sound effects, a lot of CGI, there was the scene where the nuke gets deployed.
Yeah.
And there's that long tracking shot that follows it down to the replicator planet.
Yeah, it's like a minute long.
It was challenging, it was also really exciting, but one thing I'm not sure if you realize is when we first get those scenes, it usually is like a minute long white text on black.
It's just tiles.
Basically saying, missile goes down, and we usually wait on those for as long as we can until we get some rough footage, and they tend to give us like wireframe or things like that, but it involves a lot of imagination. And I probably tend to overcompensate, thinking, not knowing what it is, I better go all out on this because chances are it's going to be a huge grand shot because they always deliver on those.
Than it should be often in that case?
I think, basically whenever they go to an effect shot, it's usually something pretty grand, so it's hard to overdo something for those. And especially one, if they're... My first thought on that was that, if this is going to be a minute-long tracking shot, it's going to be something pretty spectacular. And I didn't really end up seeing the final visuals until I saw it on the air, and was very impressed with what they came up with for that. When Atlantis is submerging for the first time, or they're submerging to get away from the beam of... My first instinct was I pulled out the CD from Rising and thought, okay, what did Joel do when Atlantis was rising? Why don't I do something like that? But
do it backwards.
So I didn't literally do it backwards, but I tried to create a sense of, hey, we're back to the beginning, we're full circle, we're so I kind of brought that back musically, and again, the sort of recreating the feeling that I got when I first heard Joel's Rising cue, which is one of my favorite things he's ever written. I'm trying to evoke that same kind of feeling, but differently, knowing that it's a darker moment. I'm very proud of that moment, and being able to tie it all in with the previously established stuff. done a lot of the space battle kind of things that have ended up getting buried behind the sound of
Yeah.
lasers and stuff. But that doesn't mean that I cut any corners or anything. I'll get in there and I'll do the most intricately layered, bombastic thing I can possibly come up with, just for the fun of it, knowing that once it gets into the show behind the F-302s and everything flying around,
the darts,
yeah, you're probably not going to hear it all that detailed. But there is the scene in Enemy at the Gate when Shepard they're flying over Area 51 and the darts are attacking. That was one of those cases. I had a lot of fun with that, and I loved writing that big, grand, very intense action stuff. And in the final broadcast, you can kind of hear it poking through behind the lasers.
You can kind of hear it. Aww.
But not that I would expect them to go all music with that or anything.
But still, is it heartbreaking when you?
No.
There's a moment, a specific moment that you thought the music shined in, and it gets drowned.
I've come to accept the fact that it's in the best interest of the show at any given time for if the moment is about the sound effects and about the space battle, then that's what you should be hearing. Mm-hmm. It's a little tough sometimes to watch it on TV because the TV signal is actually very compressed, and the sound tends to get very. It's not very dynamic. You don't really hear a lot of the detail. So on the DVDs, there's a lot more subtlety to the sound. You get to hear a lot more of the details.
What do you think of in terms of that respect? What do you think about the movement towards HD television? Is it about damn time, or is it not close enough, or what?
It's definitely about time. I mean, I have a Blu-ray player, and I wish they had more movies for it. And I understand they're waiting for the market to get saturated before they put out stuff like Star Wars and the like.
So that we can buy it for the 17th time.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And then we'll wait for HD Blu-ray and then buy it again. And HD DVD.
Just plug into our brains, why don't you? Get it over with.
I know. I saw Coraline last night in 3D, and I was so blown away by the visuals in that. I can't wait until regular television on TV is in 3D, and we have implants in our eyes that we don't even need glasses.
I saw you on the Midway in San Diego. What was it like to finally sit with a group of fans who are fans of your music and your work? What was it like to be saturated by Stargate Continuum with the rest of them?
A lot more exciting than sitting in my living room and watching it on TV. I'll definitely say that.
Yeah.
No, it was tremendously exciting, and I got very emotional watching it on a big screen, and just the excitement that not only the fans had for it, but the crew and everyone was just really excited about how well it came out. And excited to have been involved with it, and I'm really proud of that movie. It really came out wonderful, and yeah, seeing it with the fans was definitely an added bonus to it.
Except when the kawoosh blew out the speakers.
Yes.
Yeah, I was afraid that they wouldn't be able to repair them. I was like, oh my god.
I'm not sure everyone had even realized that the front speakers were out because you could still hear the music and the sounds. But because the dialogue comes from the front, we're just hearing music coming from behind us and no sound effects and no dialogue.
So turn on captions.
It's like they went a little artier with this than I was expecting. Yeah.
So with Stargate Universe, obviously I know we don't want to, we can't talk very much about it, nor do I want us to talk a lot about it, but we're going for a darker show, and a show that's more akin to a scale and grandeur of Lost meets Battlestar Galactica with Stargate on a ship, and we're on the edge of the universe. Things are dark, power is scarce, energy is scarce. What kinds of palettes do you anticipate playing with this show?
At the moment, I believe Joel is working on establishing that palette of colors and themes and that kind of thing. And I'm anxious, as everyone is, to hear what he comes up with.
You haven't heard
And
anything yet?
no, pretty much everything I know about the show I know from Gateworld. Like I get all my Stargate news from Gateworld because you guys get it first. At first, I was paying attention to all the news about the show and seeing what they were doing casting wise and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I decided to sit back and I'm just going to wait until I see an edited episode, see how it all cuts together, see how the dynamics are of the cast and see how it all plays. And I'm sure by that point, Joel and I will have discussed where he wants to take things musically, and let's go from there. Because until I see the show, I'm just, I don't want to make any preconceptions about it.
Mm-hmm. When do you anticipate receiving the first cut of air?
No idea. I really don't know.
Okay. Is it just random when it comes in, or is there usually like a date when you can expect it?
I think they have a schedule that at this point is changing constantly. So
Of course, yeah, it's a brand new series.
So there's no way to know for sure. So rather than stress out about it, I'm just gonna sit back and wait till things get a little more finalized.
Do you ever get writer's block when it comes to scoring your music? Do you ever get yourself into a situation where I do not know what to put here?
We don't generally have the luxury of writer's block. We can't sit around and go, well, I can't think of anything today, so take the day off.
Well, do you just put any old thing in there if that's the case? I mean,
no, at some point when inspiration doesn't show up, you have to rely on craft, and you go with the techniques you've learned and the things you know have worked in the past. Sometimes I can be beating my head all day trying to write 1 minute of music, and by the end of the day hate it. And then some days I'll write like 6 minutes of music, and it's the best thing I've ever written, and it was like the easiest thing in the world. So it really depends on some unseen factor. The deadline basically makes thit.
Is it kind of freeing that way?
It can be. If I'm really stuck on something, I'll be like, I can struggle with this for days, but it has to be done. So you kind of you let it go, and I often will listen back to things and be like, I don't know what I was so stressed out about. It wasn't
that bad.
Joel and I especially, we want at any given time to write better than we've ever written before, and we hold ourselves to such high standards that sometimes that'll drive you a little crazy. You're second-guessing yourself over and over again, and you're trying to force something to happen that has to happen naturally. And usually the times you're not trying to write a masterpiece are the times you write the masterpiece.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys ever missed a deadline?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Now, you did The Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King opening themes for the cinematics in the World of Warcraft MMO series.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience. They're much more fantasy-driven in terms of sound than Stargate is. Where do you go for inspiration from that? Do you play?
I don't. No, to be honest, I don't. Well, I don't play Warcraft, but I've played StarCraft in the past, and I love first-person shooter games and that kind of thing. But I haven't actually played Warcraft. But I familiarized myself with the lore, and they've written languages for the game that I've actually written lyrics in both of those cinematics. I had to write lyrics for the choir, and I used a combination of Latin as well as languages that they had written for the in-game play. And they have all kinds of history, and there's so much depth to the world they've created, even beyond the game, that they draw from creatively as a company. That
there's more there than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, to the extent
of content.
Yeah, to the extent that they've written novels and stuff based on that. It's really its own universe in so many ways. Its own world of Warcraft.
do you have anything on the horizon besides Stargate that we should be looking out for in the near future?
Well, I'm doing a little more work in games at the moment on a couple things that I can't really talk about yet, but I'm hoping to be able to post information about it on my website soon. And then, Universe is on the horizon, and looking forward to getting started on that.
Are you satisfied with where your career is at this point? Where do you want to find yourself in, say, 10 years?
Retired with hundreds of millions of dollars. No, I would never retire. It's no fun to that.
Yeah, retiring is death.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I love writing for film. I love the opportunity that film gives you to develop a theme and develop a score that has an arc to it, a beginning, middle, and an end. That's always exciting. Games are a lot of fun too because you get to write free of picture, and the music that's being done in games is very exciting right now. It's a very young industry, the music for games. It's kind of an exciting time to be involved with that, and I think a lot of film composers are looking to games now as new outlets for music and for experimentation. Music in games now it involves a lot of just saying, hey, what would happen if I did this? You can't really get away with that in a big Hollywood movie.
Yeah. You think it's one of the new frontiers for musicians to stretch their legs? You think it's a direction that's going to be more and more prominent in the future?
To some degree. On the other side of things, you have your independent Sundance kind of film that there's not a lot of games right now where you're going to score the whole thing with a ronroco or some kind of a ethnic instrument like that. But I think that the two things are both very exciting for me. I love the idea of experimenting with music and trying new things, trying new ways to move people emotionally and through music. So independent film is a great avenue for that, and games is as well.
Wormhole disengaged.